Hey everybody, listen, here I am having a bit of a read and reflecting a little bit on the content of the House Millionaire, the book that we've written about investing in rooming houses. And I thought I'll continue this series of conversations with you around the content of the book and what it covers. And particularly today, I wanted to talk to you about covering chapter 3 is the regulatory and legals portion of the book. It's a bit boring in a way. It's not really the particularly exciting part of the book, but in a way, it's the one that avoids you getting into real trouble. The content of this book will guide you to some of the key elements that you need to consider when investing in rooming houses, and particularly when building and operating rooming houses, to make sure that you don't end up with a big monkey on your back. We call it, defeat the monkeys, as we were kind of planning some of this content and some of the sessions and the chapters in the book. And in the case, it's a pretty lengthy chapters. We've gone to a significant amount of detail to make sure that we didn't just want to kind of just be shallow and just cover the surface and just say 2 or 3 things about the regulatory requirements and the legal requirements around rooming houses. We wanted to make sure that we cover it in deep detail, real detail, and make sure that we provided you with a framework that ultimately will allow you to do your own research, to control your own destiny, and to make sure that you're always in a place where you're operating legally, from a completely compliant, that you control your risk, and you don't end up back in a cage later on. So the book covers a few things around legal, and let me actually talk about them. The first thing, and it's kind of one of the things that most people first think about rooming houses when they are involved in investment communities, when they maybe have done some training. It's kind of one of those things that the people who sell courses and teaches this stuff always kind of mention, and it's because it's effectively the most accessible information in terms of being public, everyone having access to it. Nothing better than making a course with information that was available to the public anyway. So the first area that we cover is the building code. We talk about building classes, we talk about the requirements from a building code perspective. Many of you know that I started my property career as a builder, and Stone Horizon actually started its life as a building company first, and only later we decided to turn around and specialize into rooming houses. We obviously still build them. In fact, we're probably one of the very, very few specialized builders of rooming houses in the state of Victoria, maybe in the whole country, because this is all we do. We don't build anything else. But this is not an ad for Stone Horizon. This is a comment on the book, and I guess I'm just giving you a little bit of a background around why we cover building code part first. So we talk about there's 2 classes of building that a rooming house can live under. One of them is kind of similar to a house, I guess that's a starting point. It's a class 1, it's dwellings. Class 1A being a regular house dwelling, and then class 1B being kind of rooming house. So we go and cover a fair bit of what's there and the differences and what's kind of involved. And then for bigger rooming houses, or if you do not meet the requirements of class 1B as a building, there's plenty of rooming houses out there, and the old school rooming houses are considered to be a class 3. Now, these numbers by themselves will not mean much to you until I guess you cover the rest of the details, but also it's something that your builder or whoever is going to be doing the construction for you, which in many cases will not be the investor itself, can then cover. Then we enter into the second stage of the legal requirements and the regulatory framework, which is, I guess we call them the planning requirements. Different places around the country have different regulatory requirements around planning. In fact, different states have different names for this thing. In Victoria, the planning requirement it's fairly positive towards investors in rooming houses, probably the best regulatory framework in the country. It's also fairly consistent because a lot of the regulation from a planning perspective has been done across the state rather than on a council by council fashion. It's also the one that allows us to build the biggest properties with the better services and the better amenities. It's the main reason why my personal portfolio, it's all here in the state of Victoria. Again, we cover a fair bit of why and how in the pages of the book. And then we go into, well, once the building is there, once you've gone through planning, once you've gone through construction, then there is a set of minimum standards that are required, minimum services that need to be provided for the residents of the property. So we go over those. We talk about the requirements for each room or each studio, like we call them. Talk about best practices for the whole house. We talk about standards and requirements for kitchens. We talk about standards for dining facilities. Basically every area of the house, the laundry, every single aspect. We cover a fair bit of detail what the requirements are or each of those areas to make sure that you're going to ultimately be in a place where you can provide the services and get the results you want without getting into trouble. Then we cover there's some other minimum standards, particularly around things like accessibility and the like. And then towards the end of that chapter, we move the discussion beyond the monkeys, beyond the pure minimum regulatory mandate. And we talk about why we go and why I have gone personally above and beyond those minimum requirements put into our properties, things that are legally not required to be there, but that do have a massive impact on the property performance, if you like, and on the experience of the residents, because ultimately I recognize through this journey that every dollar that I was going to make in property, and particularly in high cash flow properties and rooming houses, will ultimately come from a resident. They don't come from the land, they don't come from the building, they don't come from the bank, they come from a resident living there. So we believe that we need to provide them with an incredibly level of service to make them happy, to make them stay for longer, and to take care of the property. It's a great chapter. It's one of the biggest chapters in the book because it covers in so much detail all the different elements that are required. I'm pretty sure it's going to be really useful for you when you read the book. And as always, I hope you enjoy it as much as I did and writing it. And feel free to let us know if you have any questions. We'll be covering the rest of the book in another video very soon.